So for my penultimate internship, I interned at A.T. Kearney, which is one of the consulting firms after the big three consulting firms.
The last firm I was doing internship in was PwC Deal Strategy.
In the summer of my third year, I interned with A.T. Kearney as a summer business analyst. And the firm had a very collaborative kind of culture.
Bain is very collaborative. It is also one of the more fun and exciting consulting firms relative to the other consulting firms. I've also interned at BCG, so that's another great place to work.
So the culture of the firm was very lively, as it was a big four company. They actually had lots of young people. The average age of the firm was either 26 or 28 from my memory. That was one of the most astonishing number I heard during my onboarding.
Okay, what I felt the firm's culture was like was that its people were really friendly and approachable, and I really enjoyed my internship given the fact that I was given a real taste of what life as a management consultant would be like.
People are very task-oriented, but at the same time, they care about how each other are feeling. So I think it's the best of both worlds.
Being an intern in PwC Deal Strategy was very enriching. They were very serious in their trainings. So even though I only did an 8-week internship, or even shorter than that, they still conducted a full onboarding with a full training program for the first week, which was unseen, in my experience at least, from my other internships.
Honestly, they don't treat an intern very different from a full-time associate because the internship is kind of like a 10 weeks interview for you to see whether you're a good fit for the firm. Perhaps there is more social activities because you get to start with an intern start class, and then you also end the internship with your intern start class. There's also a lot of support given to the interns, so we actually have a buddy who is 1 to 2 years into the job, so he can relate to the intern. And we also have a mentor who is in charge of all the interns throughout the internship period. And we also have a sponsor who is someone that is relatively more senior. And these would be the three main people that we will go to if we have any issues that we want to clarify with. But beyond those three formal support systems, there is also the informal support system. So your case team, they will regularly check with you how you're feeling, whether you're coping okay. And there's also your intern start class that you can, have very colloquial offline conversations with.
So consulting companies generally has 4 to 6 levels of structure, a hierarchy, and it usually goes down from partner to principal to managers and to associates, which also sometimes called consultants.
Right. So a consulting firm is like a clinic or hospital where patients go to them to diagnose what exactly is their problem, and the doctors will then prescribe the right treatments. So in a case of a consulting firm, when the client companies actually find themselves having a business problem, what they will do is they will release a tender stating exactly what problem they are trying to solve. And consulting firms which are interested in solving this particular problem will then come up with a proposal to submit to the client.
The consulting firms would bid for the projects, and then the client will decide which consulting firm they would want to work with. So if your consulting firm is picked up for the project, you will work very closely with the clients to solve their specific business problem. And there is a lot of collaboration, there is a lot of discussions with the team, and then they will have a final presentation to the so-called C-suite, and then that would kind of mark the end of the entire consulting project.
So before joining the firm, I had an expectation that since I was an intern, I'd be doing most of the manual labor, so to speak. Like most of the grunt work. If there's any Excel spreadsheet that needed cranking out, I'll be the one doing it. If there's any PowerPoints that needed to be made, any decks that had to be built, I would be the one doing it, and I wouldn't really participate in the strategic problem solving for the client. However, my experience at A.T. Kearney proved otherwise. So I was actually very fortunate to be part of 2 projects during one internship. Interns are typically assigned to just one project during their internship.
As a as a year 2 undergraduate, I think what I expected in a particular internship is that I'll be given very clear roles and responsibilities, and I know my KPIs and I know whether I've attained my goals at the end of the internship. But as for this particular strategy position with KPMG, I felt what was really different is that I got to understand that as a management consultant, the problems that you're solving on a daily basis are very ambiguous, and the things that you do are not clearly defined. And this is when you need a lot of discipline. You have a lot of autonomy, and at the same time you need a lot of discipline to actually find out what you can do to solve the particular problem at hand. And it's not always the case that your manager or your performance manager will give you very clear directions on what to do, and it's something that you got to work it out on your own.
I would say in my most recent internship in PwC, we had a CDD, which is commercial due diligence project, and this type of project tend to be more intense than others, especially than the strategy type. And there was one whole week which I remembered a few of the senior associates, they actually slept in the office. So that one intensive week was something that got me surprised in the beginning, but also made me mentally more prepared for my future work.
I think it was largely up to expectations. What really surprised me was the amount of emphasis they actually put on making sure that people were feeling good. So I would say I've really kind of covered that in the support system part. So yeah, largely up to expectations.
So all in all, I think it was a great experience. I really was able to understand how a consulting firm works as from an inside perspective. I always read people's experiences online, but experiencing yourself is a totally different thing. And a lot of people are able to understand whether they're really cut out for that job or not once you do an internship. So really recommend people looking to get into consulting to get an internship in a consulting firm.
So during my project, we had 3 steering committee meetings, and we were presenting ideas to like the C-suite. So the CEO, the chief marketing officer, everyone was there. And the experience to me as a fresh graduate was very eye-opening, because as a fresh grad, you are seeing very, very senior people converse, and you are seeing how they debate ideas, and it's just a very refreshing experience for me, and that kind of exceeded my expectations as well.
I wouldn't say that that's a standard day-to-day, but I think there are a few recurring themes throughout the different days of a management consultant. The days will mainly be packed with internal meetings, which means within the team, you will be discussing with your project partner, with your line manager, as well as with other consultants of the same level. So that will be the internal meetings. In terms of external meetings, that would be meetings held routinely with the client, either to get to know the client, receive certain data points from the client, or to present your findings to the client. And that will be the second part. And I think the last part, which is also more often than not the most crucial part of the day, will be you will have some time on your own, some quiet time to actually work on your own analysis.
No 2 days are the same, I would say. But if I really had to generalize, I think usually we have a team check-in in the morning, and then we just make sure that everyone is pretty much on task. And then for the junior associates, we will check with our supervisors on what are the deliverables for the day. And then we will check in with our supervisor, usually on an hourly basis, just to make sure that everything is on check. it's almost like we're working on an agile Scrum framework.
If the project is not based in your home country, which could quite often be the case, you'll have to travel.
So a lot of consulting firms, they operate on like a regional staffing model, meaning that as a Singapore consultant, you may be posted to anywhere in the region, such as Bangkok or Jakarta, to work on a particular project. And that's when you will spend some time traveling, checking into airports. And these are the times whereby you will still need to find yourself to be productive, even though you may be quite tired. Yeah.
And as an intern, you are typically attached to one of the work stream to help with usually the more intense work stream. And the whole day you will be doing 3 things. Number 1, research on data or research on qualitative information. Number 2, drawing slides. And number 3, helping with many kinds of other works. So day-to-day job, there's really not a typical day, but if you are starting as a business analyst, I'd say a long chunk of time you can expect to spend in the office doing research and doing your PPT.
I can't say too much because of the confidentiality issue, but if I had to speak from a very macro and surface level overview, I would say my project was about cutting the costs of a client in the insurance industry, and it required a lot of discussions with the client, and it also required a lot of modeling and manipulation of the data to find out where exactly were the expenses coming from. So which customer segment was driving the majority of the costs and why were they doing so. So we actually had discussions with some of the clients who were speaking to some of the end consumers of the insurance product to really try and understand what was their motivation, what was their mentality. And of course, beyond that, we also did a lot of secondary research to find out what kind of behaviors were driving the cost up. So my project was largely on coming up with recommendations to bring down the cost, but that was just my work stream. Overall, the whole project also had a revenue growth side to it, but I didn't really cover that side of the project.
In my most recent internship with ATK, I was working on a telecommunications project, for this Indonesian client. And what they are doing is they are trying to find out how much does it cost to deliver each unit of their service to a customer in Indonesia. So, in other words, it was like a consulting project with a very heavy focus on accounting, which is also why I was staffed onto that particular project due to my undergraduate discipline. I was mainly undertaking tasks of doing financial modeling to find out exactly how much it costs to deliver each unit of the product. And in the course of doing it, there were quite a number of difficulties which I'll be happy to share later on.
So I had 3 consulting internships. The first one in Accenture strategy was an internationalization strategy for a power manufacturer company. And the second one was in ATK, and that was a commercial due diligence for a PE, for private equity clients, and our target was a soft drink company. And the third one was in PwC deal strategy. Client was also a PE firm, and our research target was actually related to my major, was MRO company in aerospace industry, meaning maintenance, repair, and overhaul company in the aerospace industry. So as you can see, even with a very technical background in aerospace engineering, consulting firms allow you to participate in projects in all kinds of industries, and that's really eye-opening, and I really enjoyed that breadth of work.
So I worked on 2 projects while at AT Kearney, and my first project was for a payments provider. It was a strategy project, so they wanted to understand how could they enter 8 countries in the Asia Pacific region. And since there were 4 people on my team, I was assigned to understand how can we enter 2 of those 8 countries. However, in my second project, I was part of a much larger team, and this was for a telecommunications player. It was a cost optimization project, which means we had to find cost savings for the client. So here a lot of the work was involved with going through data and seeing where was the company overspending, how could we optimize their spending, a lot of data-driven insights. However, the first one was more of strategic thinking, talking to industry experts, coming up with innovative solutions. In consulting, a lot of people think that most of the work is strategic based. However, while there is work that is strategic, a lot of it is moving towards implementation based, and I think it's important for students to know that as well.
Okay, I think there were 2 main challenges associated with this internship. The first one being a very drastic difference in business culture between Singapore and Indonesia. So I think there's a general need to be able to understand things from the client's perspective, why they are prioritizing certain tasks over your data points, why they are responding in a certain way during the client meetings, etc. So I think generally it's about being able to manage the clients effectively in order to deliver the project on time. The second difficulty being that there were quite a lot of difficulties in producing the financial model. Okay, that was the final output of the project. It's a very complex model, and that requires quite a lot of collaboration between the different clients. So I was needed to actually liaise with around 10 to 12 line managers in the course of my project to obtain the data points necessary for doing the financial model. And the financial model itself is also rather complex due to the so-called technical difficulties of executing the accounting concept onto an Excel sheet.
Challenges, there were multiple challenges. I think the one that I struggled with the most was dealing with this expectation of having zero defect work. So zero defect work, or ZD for short, means that consultants are expected to deliver work that is literally perfect, in that we cannot make any mistakes when it comes to the data. When we come up with a PowerPoint slide, the charts and everything should be crisp. There should not be any labeling issues with what the chart title is, what the axes are. So when you're manipulating millions of lines of data, it's quite stressful to have to make sure that every single line of data is accurate, and it's also quite stressful to make sure that your data on the Excel translates nicely into a PowerPoint slide, and that PowerPoint slide is immaculate. So that was something that I struggled with a lot, because I didn't know whether in the process of manipulating the data or transposing the data I made any small careless mistakes, and that caused a bit of stress as well. But I spoke to the people, the support system, and they said, just make sure that the process is done right, and then the outcome, sometimes if you make a mistake, it's still fine. Just make sure that you learn from why you made the mistake, and then make sure you don't repeat the same mistake again. So that having that zero defect expectation would be one of my biggest struggles.
So one of the challenges that I faced as an intern was not being able to find the data that I was required to. As an intern, our job was to prove or disprove some of those hypotheses with the data that we researched. And sometimes we are given data which we couldn't find online. Most of the time, the information may not be available for a private company, especially if the industry that you are researching tend to be more private, where the companies are not public. And this is very common for private equity, commercial due diligence type of projects. when I met this kind of problem, I needed to think about how I can find this piece of data from a different angle. For example, if the manager wanted to know about the size of this certain maintenance and repair and overhaul market for the business jet industry, and I realized that it's impossible to find it, there's no industry report on this one, I would then find a proxy. For example, if I could find data in the US market, and I can find how many airplanes there are in the US, and I find this multiple and apply this to the Asian market, which we are looking at, and from another way, tackle this problem and try to get a market size estimation. And from day-to-day job, we will get lots of this type of work, which is quite intellectually stimulating for me, and I enjoy that piece of work.
As an engineer studying computer science, or as a computer scientist, things are very black and white for me. Everything is in binary, right? Zeros and ones. However, in the real world, when you start working for a consulting company, you start to realize that things are usually more in gray than black and white. And it was very difficult for me to adapt to that, right? So in consulting, you don't really know if it's correct or wrong. Things are usually in in colors of gray and shades of gray. So I think the ability to work with ambiguity was something I didn't really have, and it was something I really struggled with. But over the course of my internship, it was an ability I developed. So the second challenge I faced was that of time management. I used to work till 12 a.m., 2 a.m. It was pretty frequent for me. And I used to think that it's just because I had a lot of work to do, right? But looking back on it, while I did have a lot of work to do, that didn't mean I couldn't go home earlier. So I think the ability to manage your time, there are some meetings that I didn't really have to attend. Drinks, or I would take a long break, just to de-stress. Those things perhaps were not that necessary or didn't have to be for that duration. And once you start understanding that, you're able to manage your time better, and you're able to do much more in a lesser amount of time. So I think these are the two key challenges I faced.